Not bad, huh? That is probably my 6th MIG weld with this new MIG welder. Let me tell you all about it. Long story short, I've had a flux core welder for years. I like it. I've done a little MIG welding at a class, and then I thought maybe I could get a MIG welder. And then I saw this company, Vevor, and I saw this multi-purpose welder, and I emailed them and said, hey, if you send me one of those, I'll try it out and make a video. So this is that video. Short story is, it works pretty good. I did some testing with it. There's different settings on here. And that can be probably your first mystery when you're starting to do flux core or MIG welding. But I just experimented. There are some great guides online to what your speed and voltage, wire speed and voltage. We'll talk about those in future videos, but I'm liking this already. It's 20 degrees outside here. It's really quite easy to do. And yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I was testing the wire speed and the power rating. In other words, the voltage. And then this is 1/8 inch regular old steel, some stock I had. And then that last one, the longer one, is really quite good for kind of like a weekend amateur kind of guy like me. So let me walk you through this and go from there. There's a selector here for different welding modes. MMA is stick welding, lifter TIG, which is for aluminum and stainless steel, I believe. And then there is MIG welding here. And then in the kit here, this is for TIG welding. This is for stick welding. I've never done stick welding, and I want to do that because this is great because you could be out in the field. If you need to repair a trailer, you can literally plug into an outlet and stick welding is a true, well, they're all kind of a true craft and art, but this one I think is the hardest to master, so I want to try and master that. And in addition to those, this will also do what's called flux core welding. It's also sometimes called gasless MIG welding in some of the descriptions online. So be careful when you're looking at buying a welder, this brand or any other. If it says gasless MIG, in American English, that's a flux core welder. I guess in other countries, maybe that's what they call it. I don't know. My big thing in wanting the MIG welder is I'm working on a new maple syrup evaporator, and I want to do some tack welds on very thin metal. And from what I understand, MIG welding is best for thin metals like that, just tack, 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 because it's out of a file cabinet, The thing you need to know about MIG welding, difference than flux core, is you will need a tank of argon CO2 mix and a valve. These two usually do not come, I almost never see them come with the welder itself. I suggest you buy your tank locally. I found this great family-owned welding supply shop, and they were super helpful. I did buy the valve online, and I'll link to that. Also, the company, Vevor, sent me an Amazon link if you want to buy this from Amazon. There's a link below. The key thing with the valve that I found is that these connections have to be quite tight. They are brass. I'll talk about that more in a video when I talk about tanks and stuff like that. But those have to be tighter than you think they have to be. Learn from me. On the controls here, we have burn back, voltage, wire speed. If you're doing stick, this is for the stick control. I also like that it has this wire feed button. So when you're first running a spool of wire out through your welding stick here, you don't have to be running the system, the power welding part. Weekend welder here. But you just hit this button and it unspools it, comes out here, ready to go. The positive and negative nodes, cables, are really well marked here. When you're doing flux core, you want your welding wand to be negative. And if you're doing MIG welding, you want the welding wand, that's what I call it, to be positive. And that's marked really nicely here. So some of the others, you got to disconnect them with screws and nuts and tighten them back down again. This is like disconnect, in, out, boom, you're done. This is a pretty robust connector for your welding wire and gas. This will plug into 120 volt. Make sure you're plugging into a really good outlet. I know my outlet in the garage here is 12 gauge wire going to the breaker box. Anything lower, I think it's kind of dicey. It also runs on 220. So if you have a 220 plug in your garage, boom, you're ready. You'll also have a longer weld time. The welder will weld longer without needing to take a break. In other words, that's kind of weekender welder parlance. Yeah, I know you're yelling back at the video, but this is our adapter to go to 110. That's been fine with me. Look at this fancy case. Some welding glasses. I use a helmet. I think you're better off with that, but in a crunch, you could do this. Really, I think you're better off with a helmet because these are your eyes. You only have 2 of them. Think about that. This is a spool of wire for MIG welding that feeds out through this control here into your feed wire. And then that wire comes out here. The wire on here is wound really tight. I am not wound tight. That was a joke. But when you take the tape off to get this and then run it through here, that wire can go and unspring, kind of like in a cartoon or like it did to me this afternoon. So just keep your hands on that, feed it through here, boom, you're ready. If you want to do flux core welding, in other words, not using the argon tank, the beauty of that is you can do flux core in windy outdoor situations. MIG welding, if there's wind, you can't weld. So if you want to do the flux core welding, you have to use flux core wire, which is different. This comes with a spool of flux core flux core wire. It did not come with a spool of the MIG welding wire. I'll link below to the one I bought. I'm really happy with that one, but this is an added bonus because this is like 20 bucks. I figured out what this thing is on the lens. When I was doing the welding, I had the GoPro really close to it, and I think a piece of metal shot in, and I may have damaged the lens of my camera. Nice. But again, this is the MIG 270 or MIG 270 by Vevor. They have asked me to put a link in below in the show notes if you want to purchase this or find out more information about it. I'm looking forward to learning how to do stick welding and also the TIG welding. And I'll make a couple more videos about this process. And after I've owned this, I'll do a much more deep review to see how it stacks up. I do have a flux core welder now, and so we could do a compare and contrast. And yeah, stick welding, here we come.